Part two of the woman who wanted to continue having kids at the age of 65. I'm a lawyer in real life. I don't play one on television, so I've been telling the story of Mary Beth Lewis, who decided she wanted to continue having children, even though she had 13, the last one she gave birth to at the age of 62. But at the age of 65, she had two embryos left, and she wanted to have two more children potentially. But this is where her legal trouble starts. So Mary Beth decides the best way for her to have two more children is through the use of a surrogate. Now, in the story, Mary Beth claims that her husband agreed, but in the story, he says he did not. So Mary Beth goes forward. She hires a lawyer. She finds a surrogate. She agrees to pay that surrogate $49,000. $7,000 bonus to the surrogate if two heartbeats are detected. She agrees to pay a bonus if she has to have a C-section of $3,500. In total, she was committing to pay over $160,000 to the surrogate. But Mary Beth and Bob, her husband, they could afford this. Bob had been a pilot. He was making in retirement over $200,000 a year. Mary Beth was a nurse practitioner, and she was making almost $100,000 a year. Now, in the article, they portray Bob throughout the marriage as being somebody who sounded like he was pretty checked out. He was a pilot. He was away from home for about 2 weeks out of every month. So he was not there dealing with those kids all the time. He would come home, deal with the kids for a little while. He'd be off back to work. But now, at 65, Bob had to retire, and Bob was now home with these kids. And in 2020, when the pandemic struck, Bob was home homeschooling young children. And Bob, according to the article, decided, hey, I'm in retirement. I'm done. I don't want no more kids. And he, according to the article, did not agree to this surrogacy. But whether he agreed or not, Mary Beth said, I'm going forward. And this is where her legal trouble starts. So according to the article, and Mary Beth admits in the article that she then forges her husband's signature on the paperwork needed for the surrogacy. So in New York State, there are surrogacy laws. It is legal, but it requires both parents who intend to be parents to sign the paperwork. So Mary Beth forged Bob's signature. The lawyer thought Bob was going along with the surrogacy. At one point, there's a hearing before a judge about the surrogacy, and Mary Beth fakes Bob being on the Zoom hearing. She signs in through a different account. Bob has his video off. When she has to answer to the judge, she kind of grunts, makes it sound like it's Bob. So she creates a fraud. She produces a fraud on the court. Now, the judge she had this hearing before, he seems to be pretty suspicious of Mary Beth. And according to the article, part of his suspicion was because of the ages. At this point, Mary Beth is 66 and her husband is 67 years old. And the judge wanted to have a home study. But in the end, he signs the agreement that allows them to be the legal parent of the children that the surrogate was carrying. At this point, the surrogate is 8 months pregnant, and all hell breaks loose. Bob receives a letter in the mail from the court about the surrogacy. He is learning for the first time at 8 months that he is about to be the father of two more children. Mary Beth's older children, her daughters, they are not pleased either. Bob calls the lawyer, allegedly his lawyer, and he tells the lawyer, I don't know anything about this. The lawyer then calls the judge. So now the judge knows that a fraud has been perpetrated upon the court. So the court rescinded the parentage order, which meant these babies who were not yet born, who were being carried by the surrogate, they had no parents. So the surrogate didn't want them. She was not genetically related to them. The egg and sperm donor had waived any rights they had to them, and now Bob did not want these children, and the state steps in and declares them wards of the state. But Bob soon comes around and he says, okay, Mary Beth, I want these children. And he agrees to that they would have the children, they would raise the children. But there's just one problem. The state is not involved, the judicial system is also involved. And Mary Beth has forged Bob's signature, she has lied to the court, and the judge knows all of this. So the surrogate is induced early. Mary Beth races to be there when the children are born, but she's too late. And when she gets to the hospital, the folks in the hospital know what has happened, and they would not allow Mary Beth to take the children. So in December of 2023, Mary Beth is charged with 30 different criminal charges. She's charged with everything from attempted kidnapping, forgery, fraud, perjury. They were throwing the book at her. And the poor babies that were born to the surrogate, they go into foster care. So they are turned over to foster parents who are now raising them. Mary Beth and Bob, they don't even know the names of these children, and they don't have any contact with the children. But Mary Beth starts to fight for these babies, and a legal battle starts. So as you can imagine, there are lots of questions. Whose children are these? They don't have a genetic connection to the surrogate or Mary Beth and her husband. And the donors, the egg donors and sperm donors, they don't have any rights to these children. So legally, who is entitled to these children? So let's talk about that in part 3.